important processes in the growth of a child. Every child needs to be breastfed over a certain period of time to ensure that their growth is on point, and of course they grow healthy. However, later on during the growth of a child, there is also another important aspect, and that is the introduction of complementary food stuffs. Now, how can the two be done properly to make sure that it's balanced and do not give a child do not give problems to a child? And of course, when can complementary foods be introduced? And of course, when should breastfeeding be done? And of course, when can it be stopped? These are some of the issues that almost every mother definitely sometimes may have a bit of a problem, and of course a bit of a challenge in terms of balancing them, especially that now we are living in an economy that is quite biting, where you'd find that sometimes due to the insufficient amount of food that a mother might be taking, the production of milk might actually be too low, which might expose a child to diseases as a result of being malnourished. So now today on the program, we are going to discuss breastfeeding and introduction of complementary food. Breastfeeding and introduction of complementary food. Some of the things that we want to look at is the importance of breastfeeding, and of course when should a complementary food be introduced. And when you introduce complementary food, does it mean breastfeeding should come to an end? Those are some of the issues that we want to discuss on the program today. For your participation, you can send us a text message on 0955 5016, 0955 5016, and of course my guest on the show today should be able to adapt and of course be able to respond to that. My guest is Dr. Beatrice Amadi, who is coming from UTH Children's Clinic, Children's Hospital, well vested in the health of children. Dr. Beatrice, welcome to the program. Good to have you today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad that you could actually make it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you are quite an expert in this particular field due to the fact that, breastfeeding and the introduction of complementary foods, these are two things that many mothers today are trying by all means to see how they can actually balance it. To start with, when we talk about breastfeeding, what do we imply?
Basically, as you know, breastfeeding is the nourishing of babies by the mothers, not only mothers, actually this is a preserve of mammals. All mammals, meaning humans and other animals in that grouped as mammals, usually suckle their young, meaning that the female of the mammals usually have breasts, and then which these then develop, or mammary glands, which develop like during pregnancy in preparation for the birth of the child. And by the time the baby is born, there's actually milk coming out. And this is a natural way of nourishing the baby to ensure that they grow and develop appropriately.
Interesting. So when we're talking about breastfeeding, we mean allowing the child to suck from the mother's breast.
Yes, basically to suckle from the mother's breast, or in a situation where there's a problem, maybe there's separation. For instance, there are situations where the baby is too ill to suckle, but breast milk can be provided by way of mother expressing the milk and giving it to her baby. Or if a mother is working, we also advise that she can express breast milk, leave it at home with whoever is caring for the baby to give. But optimally or ideally, we would want the baby to suck from the breast, because that comes also, as I said, the growth and development of the child. Development of the muscles around the mouth require that the baby is suckling. It's like some sort of exercise, physio. And also for close relationship or mother-infant bonding, which is very important for the growth and development of this of the baby. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is breastfeeding the best for feeding the baby?
As I said, it's a natural way, isn't it? It's a normal, natural way. Nature has made it that a woman who is pregnant actually starts producing milk during pregnancy, and when she delivers, the baby is put on the breast, and the breast milk it's quite dynamic. It changes according to the needs of the baby. So if you were to compare to formula you're just mixing it with water. It doesn't change. But the breast milk actually changes. The first milk that comes out soon after delivery is called colostrum. And we say this is the first immunization that the baby gets. Why do I say so? Because the colostrum contains in a lot of immune cells in it, and also contains other components that protect the baby against infection, and also they nourish the baby, and also they offer a lot more to ensure that this baby starts growing. And then after 4 days or so, we have going through transition milk to mature milk. Again, the mature milk is sort of responds to the needs of the baby at that age. And also the breast milk changes even during the time of feeding. The first milk that comes out is equivalent to like skimmed milk. It's got low fat, about 2% fat. Then the milk that comes later on behind, or we call it the hind milk, is high in fat. Again, responding to the needs of the baby. Also, there are other changes, like a mother who delivers prematurely, her milk contains more protein compared to the baby, milk of a mother who delivers at full term. The other thing I didn't say about colostrum as well is that it contains more protein as well compared to the mature milk. So response, it's appropriate for the baby, changes according to the baby's needs. So that's why it's a natural, the best way to give the baby. And of course, that is being given directly from the breast to the baby, little room for contamination. It's at the right temperature. People say it's cheap. Yes, not really cheap, but it's costly. And all it requires is that the mother should take an extra meal, maybe increase her intake by one extra meal. So it's appropriate for the baby. And most importantly, like I said, bonding between mother and baby. Usually it's said a mother who breastfeeds her baby is unlikely to abandon that baby because there's that bond that develops. Yeah.
Thank you so much. In line with the same, with the same, is it advisable for a mother to give formula milk whilst the child is within the breastfeeding period?
Ideally, no, unless the circumstances dictate that. But as I said, whatever circumstances, which maybe we may come to later, but as I said, the best is breast milk. In its composition, it's got anti-infective factors that will prevent infection in the baby. It's got growth factors as well that help for the gastrointestinal tract or the digestive tract to grow. And then it's also got other factors also that, as I said, that help the baby to grow. But there are situations where, for instance, if a mother has died soon after delivery, or the mother is very, very ill and maybe is in intensive care, in such a situation, the baby may be given formula. Or there's only one other contraindication we talk about. There's a condition called galactosemia. This is a metabolic condition in babies who can't handle the lactose in the milk, so therefore because of that they are not able to breastfeed the babies. So in situations like that, yes, but ideally for all women it's desirable that they breastfeed their babies so that the babies can grow well optimally.
All right. What are some of the benefits of breastfeeding aside from what you've mentioned?
I think probably I've gone through everything. I've talked about the anti-infective factors. I've talked about also that the milk itself is a complete feed. So the nutrients in there are in the proportions as they are required. There's no need to say that, okay, maybe I add a bit of protein here and all that. And also the nutrients are easily digested by the baby. Because if you look at formula, look at the protein, for instance, in the animal milk, the protein there is predominantly what we call casein. There are two types of protein, casein protein and whey protein. Casein protein is not easily digested, whereas the whey protein is easily digested. People who make formula milk sometimes try to make it whey predominant as well, but it's still not the same. So the biological components of the milk are superior and cannot be duplicated or even replicated or even made in a formula.
What are some of the consequences in case a child is denied full access to breast feeding?
Such a patient or a child usually is at risk of infections. Diarrhea is one of them. Respiratory tract infection is one of them. Ear infections as well. So these are patients. In fact, if you see a newborn who comes or presents with diarrhea and you ask the mother what she's feeding, I'm sure more than 98% of the time you find that they've given something else apart from the breast milk. It's mothers who have introduced either formula or they are given other replacement feeds. And those are the ones you find diarrhea. Even malnutrition. I actually work in the malnutrition ward and I'm the consultant in charge. If you go around asking all the women whose children are admitted, majority of them actually stopped breastfeeding too soon. Yeah, too soon. Or even maybe never even breastfed. Those are the children that we see in the malnutrition ward.
So when you use the statement too soon, what do you imply?
Okay, so one thing I didn't talk about basically is that when we talk about breastfeeding, a baby from birth to about 6 months exclusively needs only breast milk, nothing else, not even water, because breast milk contains inadequate amounts of water. The baby from birth to 6 months can survive wholly on breast milk. No need to give anything else. Thereafter, from 6 months onwards, we still advise to continue breastfeeding with appropriate complementary foods up to the age of 2 years. Yeah.
Interesting. I've heard some instances where, a mother would complain to say, umwana amanyonka maningi. In fact, the child is crying and she amanyonka maningi umwana. Natukache kumunyosha pamene hapa. How often is the child supposed to suck or to be breastfed during the day?
So from birth, we actually advise mothers that they need to feed on demand, but at least every 3 hours. Meaning that they shouldn't let the baby stay for more than 3 hours without breastfeeding. Some mothers tend to say, I breastfeed when the baby cries. In fact, crying is already a late sign of hunger. When the baby is waking up, or if you observe newborn babies or in the first few days, even maybe 1 or 2 months, you find that they tend to, they wake up bending towards either the left side or the right side, making some movements, like sucking movements, then they are ready for breastfeeding. Babies who are not fed frequently, like if a mother takes longer, you find that such babies even sleep longer to conserve the little energy they have. So if a mother is waiting for the baby to wake up or to cry, that baby is going to be fed inadequately. So we advise that the guidance is that at least every 3 hours, meaning that in the first week it may be like 8 times, 10 times, but later the baby settles. After 2 weeks or so, they get their rhythm, and you actually see that they sleep 2.5 hours, 3 hours, they wake up and they are ready to feed.
You're still watching Ask Your Pediatrician, and of course today's topic is quite interesting. We're looking at breastfeeding and introduction of complementary food stuff to a child's diet. Dr. Amadi is my guest on the program today from UTH Children's Hospital. She's quite an expert when it comes to this particular feed. For all your questions, you can obviously forward them to our inbox, 0955 5016, 0955 5016. Any clarification, any situation, any instances that you might actually have, you can as well definitely forward them, and of course I'm sure that Dr. Amadi should be able to help in that regard. Now, Dr. Amadi, what happens in an instance that the mother is ill, the mother is sick, and the child needs to suck? Is it advisable that a sick mother should be able to attend to a child when it comes to breastfeeding?
Obviously, it depends on the severity of the illness. If a mother has, say, maybe flu, she can't breastfeed. she's got malaria, she can't breastfeed. But if, for instance, she's very ill, she's in a comatose situation, obviously then she cannot be able to breastfeed in such a situation. It means her life is really in danger, and the first thing should be to try and save that mother's life. And I must state that once the mother gets well, she can continue to breastfeed. I'm saying so and emphasizing because one of the reasons for stopping breastfeeding is on the breast for a day, then they'll say, no, their breast has gone sour. And in fact, I find this to be one of the common conditions why or situations when mothers stop breastfeeding. Because the baby is unwell, for instance, has poor appetite, stops to breastfeed for a day or two. Then they'll say, anakana. And then they are looking for other alternatives. And alternatives usually are very unsuitable ones. And the babies then end up in my ward with severe acute malnutrition and at very high risk of death once malnutrition sets in. So if a mother is very ill, that she needs to be maybe in intensive care or in an acute situation for the period that she's unwell, breastfeeding can be disrupted. But it should start as soon as the mother's condition improves.
So during the period that breastfeeding is disrupted, formula milk comes in?
Yes, appropriate formula milk, again with advice from medical staff who are competent. We can't give formula. And what we try to do is that if we must give formula, we must make sure that it's being reconstituted properly and hygienically, and then also it's being given by cup and spoon rather than by feeding bottle, because the feeding bottles are the ones that are culprits when it comes to diarrhea and other following complications that occur. Yeah. So for that short period of time, that can be done, but as soon as mom is better and is recovering, she should be rejoined with her baby, and the baby should start breastfeeding.
How about mothers who are HIV positive?
Again, there's been a lot of development in this area. I've had an opportunity to work for a long, I've been working for quite a long time. I must say pre-HIV era, before it became so much. And then at the height of the HIV pandemic, when we didn't have antiretrovirals, and really we know the benefits of breastfeeding and the breast milk. And during that period, there were all these, of course, we do know, I must say, that HIV can be transmitted to the baby while the baby is still in the mother's womb, during the process of delivery, and then after delivery through breast milk. And so we had situations where we had to stop breastfeeding abruptly, initially at 4 months, then we said, oh, at 6 months. And I'll tell you that during those periods, my ward was packed with children with severe acute malnutrition. And then just even on our wards, a lot of children were dying. But I'm happy to say that we at the University Teaching Hospital even contributed to the science and to the current knowledge, because we were part of the study which was called the PROMISE study, and conducted in some of the clinics under leadership of the Pediatric Center of Excellence, where antiretrovirals were given to the children. And we've noticed that actually it effectively stops transmission from mother to the child. And so currently, women who are HIV infected can breastfeed as long as the baby is put on antiretrovirals, mom and baby. So, you know, we have a program now of universal offering or testing of all pregnant women, and those who are found to be HIV infected are put on treatment, and then the babies born from these women who are HIV exposed are put on antiretrovirals, depending on the risk. So we classify low risk. Those are children who are born, or babies born to women who have been on antiretrovirals for more than 12 weeks or more than 3 months. Those are low risk. We usually put them on antiretrovirals for about 6 weeks. Then the low risk are those babies born to women who have either refused to be on antiretrovirals because at the end of the day it's voluntary, or those who are on antiretrovirals for less than 12 weeks. These we put them on antiretrovirals for 12 weeks, while we are also trying to confirm diagnosis in the infant. And once it's confirmed, the infant goes on to get antiretrovirals. So we found that by doing this, transmission has been reduced. It used to be something like 40%. Now we're talking about only 4%. And our wards, we don't see those children again who between the ages of, say, up to 6 months, when we used to get a lot of them with pneumonias, born to HIV-infected women, and we lost a lot of such children. Now, we hardly see such children. A few are there. So really, there's been a lot of development, and we are all happy about this, that those women who are HIV-infected can breastfeed their babies exclusively for the first 6 months, thereafter continue breastfeeding up to 2 months with antiretrovirals.
How about in an instance that a mother is HIV positive and yet a child is born negative? What happens in that instance?
Of course, it's not all babies that get infected, but we tend to use the word exposed at birth. So when the baby is born to an HIV-infected woman, we would say this baby is HIV exposed. Those are the ones. But then we've got a program in the under 5 clinics whereby at about 6 weeks, when this baby is taken for the visit, their postnatal visit, they will do a DNA PCR where they actually do the test to find out whether this baby is infected or not. And remember, that will be in the window where the baby will be getting, because of being HIV exposed, they will be on antiretrovirals. Once it's confirmed, this baby then is put on antiretrovirals. If the baby is negative, mother is on antiretrovirals, so there's suppression of the virus in herself. So even her, she can continue breastfeeding. Yeah.
All right, so 0955 5016, that's the number that you are coming through, sending your text messages. In case you've got any questions, any queries that you'd love to make, you can simply send us your text on that particular line. Another issue that I would also want to bring to your attention is there's some mothers who complain that, their milk production is quite low, which makes it very difficult for them to breastfeed continuously. What causes that?
I think I would say generally there's nothing like not having enough milk. That's why it's important once women are pregnant and they're going for antenatal, they should be counseled on feeding options and of course on breastfeeding. And they are also, and in that counseling and we talk to mothers about the production of breast milk. How is it produced? It's a sort of, they say, law of demand and supply. So the more the baby sucks on the breast and empties the breast, the more milk is going to be produced. So basically we have a hormone called prolactin, which is responsible for the production of milk. And that the prolactin, usually it's much more secreted also at night. So that's why we advise mothers, breastfeed your baby more at night. There will be more prolactin produced, and it's going to make the milk to be, it produces milk. And then there's another hormone which is at play, also oxytocin, which also is there to help for let down or ensuring that the milk is flowing. So it's the support to the mother and counseling and ensuring that they are knowledgeable about how milk is produced and ensuring that the babies are breastfeeding. The more the baby breastfeeds, the more milk is going to be produced. And then, of course, mom should also, usually when they are breastfeeding, they feel thirsty, they also take in some fluid and then a good diet as well. Yeah, but basically production of milk depends on the emptying of the breast. Yeah.
All right, you're still watching Ask Your Pediatrician on QTV. For now, we go for our first break. When we come back, we also want now to get to now the introduction of complementary foodstuffs. And of course, we'll also take time to look at some of the questions that are coming through in our inbox as well. For now, we take a break. We'll be back shortly.
Why does it have to be standards?
It's the same as a guy is gonna come back to his friends. No, I slept with this guy, this girl, and that girl, and that girl, and
She's such a
gay.
Why?
No, for him,
He's not even a G, he's a stupid boy.
Yes,
I'm being honest.
How is he a stupid boy?
Listen, why would you brag about?
Let me tell you. I always have an excuse.
Men are usually awarded for their nonsense.
3/4.
That's
You
what,
think
that's
so?
what it is.
You think so?
I know so.
Okay. All the best. Now, that's it.
So I can literally get into your house and tear it down because I ran it.
Yes.
You owning it.
Girl,
you
power.
Listen. No.
It's
I
not
think
back to
no.
your house.
These
You
are
own
ills
a
we need
house,
to correct.
I ran it.
So what?
I can-
You're saying guys don't know how to cook? No.
I don't think she
Like
meant that
you're a guy out
literally.
there and you don't know how to cook. Please get my number. Guys, no.
She's advertising yourself. Are you Jeremiah? Are you single?
Yes, boss. We have 3 women on the show and 2 guys, but you still know we got it.
Exactly.
We love local. All of your favorite Zambian hits. And much more. Z Rampage, Fridays 9 to 12 on QFM.
Kings are born and not chosen. In one kingdom, the first generation, where people are happy with a lot to celebrate about. But when the first chief in Sofwa dies, it's the playful grandchild who takes over, Chief Muzo, and the palace is turned into a common house. Chief Muzo rules.
I am the king.
There is drama.
You are going to marry these 3 women.
If he was here, he could have stabbed him to death.
We bring you the best music videos, all genres, every day 12 hours to 13:30 on your favorite channel, QTV. Ngoma. Ngoma, every day 12 hours to 13:30.
We are still discussing breastfeeding and the introduction of complementary foodstuffs. Now, let us now try to zero in on the other aspect of our discussion today. And of course, this has to do with now the introduction of complementary foods. When we talk about complementary foods, what do we mean?
Okay, so we're talking about these foods that are complementary to the breast milk. Remember, I did say that babies, the first 6 months, can't survive adequately, grow and develop optimally just on breast milk. But from 6 months onwards, breast milk is just not enough. So they should continue breastfeeding, but they need other foods as well. So these are the complementary foods. And usually these will be made from like the porridges, basically. And it's important that as a complementary food is being introduced, it should be done in a sort of a gradual manner. And then also that the complementary food should be complete feed, meaning that it should contain all the nutrients, that carbohydrate, protein, fat, minerals, and vitamins. Or balanced, in other words, as people like to use that term. And also the complementary food should be prepared hygienically, and then also should also be given, as I said, gradually. So the baby, for instance, who has been on exclusive breastfeeding, when they turn 6 months, we advise the mother that she now starts to introduce complementary foods, and they should be introduced one at a time. I didn't mention that early introduction of other foods is associated with allergies. You know, babies tend to develop allergies to some of the foods because they are still in that first 6 months when their immune system is also growing, and introducing a lot of other foreign proteins can confuse the body and also resulting in allergies. So what we do is that to ensure also that these babies are not reacting to the foods, or if they do react, to know which foods they're reacting to. Complementary food should be started optimally at 6 months, and then one food at a time being introduced. Once the baby is tolerating that food, then we add on another food. So in our situations, usually we advise to give some porridges. You hear about mothers talking about porridge with groundnuts, or sometimes they will use soy-based porridges, or they can use other, maybe using beans and other things, but whatever it is that they should be giving it one at a time and gradually, a few spoons initially, going on to, like for instance, between 6 months to 1 year, babies should continue receiving breastfeeding, and then they have about 3 meals of complementary feeds. And then thereafter will also increase gradually. In the 1 to 2 years, they should have like 3 main meals and 2 snacks while continuing to breastfeed.
I've seen instances where, you know, as the mother is introducing complementary food to a child's diet, some children would find that they tend to react to that particular change. Others through, you know, stomach problems. Others you'd find that they every time that they eat the complementary food, they tend to vomit, and so on and so forth. Is that normal when there is that transition?
It's not normal. Ideally, at the time of introducing the complementary food, it shouldn't happen. But as I said, there are children, for instance, maybe children who are born in family where there's a strong family history of allergies, may be allergic, but usually, as I said, we start with like maize porridge, you know, and then I said added groundnuts. There are some children who may be allergic to groundnuts. Like I know one of my colleagues, the child is allergic to groundnuts. And of course, once the mother notices that, it means they shouldn't give that, but they should use other components. Maybe like they just add the milk to the porridge and give to the child. So that's why again it's important to introduce one feed at a time. Diarrhea during the time of introduction of complementary feeding, or the weaning period as we call it, diarrhea is common. Again, things to look at are hygiene. How is the hygiene being adhered to in the preparation of feed? And then also, how is the food stored? If, for instance, food is cooked and stored, is not covered, flies are perching on it, there may be diarrhea. Or maybe if younger siblings are also maybe eating from the same food which has been prepared for the child, can, or if it's prepared and not given immediately, also it can result in diarrhea. But ideally, they shouldn't be during the time of weaning. Yeah.
Okay. There are some foodstuffs that I've seen mothers give to their babies due to their cravings. For example, sweets. For example, sweet stuff, and of course others that have even gone to an extent of administering or giving their children things like yogurt and so on and so forth. I don't know whether these are ideal as part of complementary foods that should be given to a baby as you're making the
Obviously, at
transition.
6 months you wouldn't be giving sweets, and then you wouldn't. As I said, that the complementary foods are in form of porridges, so those are the ones we introduce. That and we also advise mom best also to have home cooked food, because it's freshly made and freshly cooked. That should be the ideal. But of course, there are some moms maybe who can afford, and maybe their exposure, whatever, they may give prepared already complementary food, as long as things are being done properly with hygiene adhered to. Then of course there are things like, I don't want to start mentioning products, but basically commonly now a lot of mothers are giving these maize-based drinks or products that are being made, and a lot of sugar. They actually, I don't think the manufacturers meant this to be complementary foods, but it would be helpful, for instance, maybe if they appended to say not for children less than, say, 2 years or so, because we have found that a lot of moms are giving these drinks and they are contributing to malnutrition per se. But otherwise, the foods that should be given are porridges given from a plate with a spoon. And then, of course, from 6 months, we said you can now give water. Babies can be given the complementary food with clean water as well. Either boiled water, if the family boils water, or a good source of drinking water that everybody in the family consumes, so that there's no contamination and there's no diarrhea. Yeah. The other thing, we see diarrhea as common around the period of 6 months is because the babies who are 6 months tend to put fingers in the mouth. Anything they pick, they are putting in the mouth. So again, the carers should make sure that around the child, everything is clean, and this baby is not putting maybe even chitenge materials that are not clean food and chewing on it, because again, they are starting to teeth, some of the babies. And we know mothers sometimes dismissively say, oh, baby has diarrhea, oh, it's teething. But actually diarrhea is because there's an infection. Why do babies have diarrhea at the time of teething? Because the gums itch, and the babies tend to chew on any things, trying to, as a way to scratch the itchy gums. So in the process, they get infection, and then they have diarrhea. And so if a baby has diarrhea, best to take the child to the clinic than to just dismissively say it's because of teething. Yeah.
There are so many people who are trying to get in touch with us via calls on the background, but we just want to urge those who are calling us that you can only contact us via text messages. So if you've got a question, please send us a text on the number that is actually scrolling on your screens, and you can ask, and obviously Dr. Amadi should be able to respond to that. No live calls, only text messages. Now, when a mother is introducing complementary food, or is about to introduce complementary food to the doctor, is it to the baby actually? Is it advisable to make consultations to the doctor?
Yes, because not particularly a doctor specifically, but these babies are taken regularly to the under 5 clinic. And I would like to believe that in the under 5 clinics, at some point, because they usually discuss different health topics or they give health education. So at some point, the maternal child health nurses should be able to give a talk to all the mothers about complementary feeding or introduction of complementary feeding. Or if this is not done in a group, maybe on an individual basis. But again, I would encourage moms as well, those ones whose babies are turning 6, to feel free to approach the nurses, or if they've been to a doctor for any reason, to seek guidance. And then also our nutritionists, actually, we have nutritionists in all the clinics. I think all over, I mean, at least in Lusaka, I know that all the clinics do have a nutrition clinic. And it's important to interact with the nutritionist and also encourage our nutritionist colleagues that if they are not doing so already, they should be able to get a slot in the under 5 clinic and give a talk on weaning, because it's a very important milestone in a baby's life, going from exclusively breastfeeding to now starting the feed. And they can give examples of the various weaning foods that they should offer. And what should be stressed is the introduction of one feed at a time.
I've seen some mothers slow down when it comes to breastfeeding, especially when they introduce complementary food to the dad of the baby. How often should now a child be breastfed when complementary food is introduced?
Okay, so I mean, initially I'd say like on demand at least every 3 hours. And then at this period, probably the baby will be getting breast milk, like say every 4 hours, okay, as they begin to give the complementary feed. And then once the baby is now taking well, like 3 feeds a day in the age group 6 months to 1 year, the breastfeeding can go to at least 4, and then going on to say maybe 6 hourly later. But breast milk should continue to be offered to the baby, you know. But so obviously the mother should ensure that the 3 meals are given in between. The baby should be able to breastfeed day and night as well.
Somebody is asking, what is the difference between complementary food and supplementary food?
Okay, so complementary food is what we are discussing now. So this is well babies who have been on exclusive breastfeeding. They've attained 6 months, then they're going to on complementary feeding, complementary to the breast milk. Supplementary is a food we give to the children who are undernourished. As I mentioned, I work with children with severe acute malnutrition. So malnutrition in the clinics, we classify as moderate acute and then severe acute. So those who are moderately acute, who are wasted, they don't have swelling of feet, usually they are on supplementary feeding, and they are given a high energy protein supplement, which is HEPS, plus given advice on other foods that they can give from home. So that is supplementary feeding. Complementary is the one we're giving to the well babies who are now growing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, among the cases that you usually encounter on a day-to-day basis, sometimes you'd find that mothers could come and, of course, explain to you to say, my child, the growth of my child, I think it's too slow. Sometimes there are instances where, you know, the mother decides to introduce complementary food to the dad of the child, and the rate at which the child is growing could be slow sometimes. What is the best advice that you usually offer to mothers in terms of how they're supposed to handle that? Because at some point, some mothers might feel maybe the food they're giving to their child is not appropriate.
Okay, I mean, for the mother to say the baby is not growing, of course they have to be objective. We have the under 5 clinics, isn't it? Where it's advised that mothers should take their children every month. And one of the activities in the under 5 is that the babies are weighed. And babies who are growing should be gaining weight. In fact, like if I go back to the newborn, a newborn who is being breastfed adequately, getting enough, gains about 25-30 grams a day, translating into the 25 a day, so about 100 grams a week. and then in a month. So babies from birth to about 1 year ideally should gain about 7 kilos. And then they slow down between 1 and 2 years where they gain only about 2 kilos or so, and then it goes slower. So a mother who is introducing baby who was being breastfed appropriate in the first 6 months should be growing very well, and we usually say babies double their birth weight by 6 months. So if this baby was born 3 kilos, by 6 months, 5-6 months, we expect this baby to be somewhere around 6 kilos or so. And then thereafter, as we introduce the complementary food, the baby should continue gaining weight. And this should be seen as the mother is taking her baby to the clinic. Because again, advice to moms, the under 5 clinic, babies, it's under 5, so every single month the baby should be taken for weighing, whether there's immunization to be given or not. Because at times moms tend to go only when there's immunization, and after the 9 months measles immunization, they stop going. But to be able to see how their babies are growing, they need to take them every month. And now we're even doing, improving in the way we monitor the growth of children. We're introducing measuring the length, because the growth of children is in weight and length. So we're actually revising our under 5 card, and our activities are going to be revised. So within the clinic, the mother should already appreciate that her baby is growing well, and the staff there should be able to reassure those mothers whose babies are growing well. If a baby is not growing well, they should go through how is she feeding? Is she feeding adequately? Is there any illness? You know, those are the things to look out for. If a baby is not ill, they should be growing well, and as long as they are being fed adequately. If not, this should be discussed in the clinic.
What of in instances where, you know, a child, even as you know, a parent, the mother, the father decides to introduce complementary food stuff to the diet of the child still clings so much on breastfeeding, such that, you know, shows signs of not really having an appetite for complementary food stuff.
I think I've seen such babies who are always on the breast. I mean, we usually tell mothers that there's as I said, every 3 hours, then we're going to every 4 hours. So there has to be, and this time the baby between 6 months to 1 year, they need 3 feeds. So the mother should ensure that those 3 feeds are given, and breastfeeding is also given, spread out, you know, because not to let the baby be on the breast all the time, but the baby should also be given the other foods. And I think obviously if there's an issue, I can even invite such a mother. I mean, I'm not calling every mother to come to me, but they can go to the clinic. If it's not working, they can come to the children's hospital, not only myself, and other people, and consult. And as I said, in the clinics, let them make use of we have nutritionists as well in all the clinics who can deal with some of these issues. And if they've failed, then they refer to us, because we're a referral center, and we look at even well babies who are having issues, maybe not growing well. But I think if a baby is being given adequately, what is important is what is being given, how much and how often. And of course, breastfeeding should also not be stopped in between. Yeah.
Ephraim from Chipata is asking to say, can there be a problem if a child is breastfed when the mother is pregnant?
Can there be? Again, very important question. We've seen women who, the moment they find out that they are pregnant, they abruptly wean the baby off the breast. And the next thing is this baby now will develop malnutrition. In fact, one type of malnutrition called kwashoko. Kwashoko is a word from Ga language in Ghana. It's actually talks about a displaced child. Typical situation, mother is pregnant, she stops breastfeeding, and then this baby feels, unwanted emotionally, and then also is not being given the right type of food, develops severe acute malnutrition. Our advice is that weaning should be done gradually. The mother who finds herself pregnant can still continue to breastfeed, increase her own intake, but this should go on to about 6 months or so, because beyond that, Remember I talked about this hormone called oxytocin for letting down or the milk. Oxytocin also causes contraction of the uterus, because each time the baby is sucking on the breast, the mother part in the brain there, oxytocin is produced, and that's what makes the milk to flow. Oxytocin also affects the contraction of the uterus. Again, maybe going back, I missed this advantage of oxytocin, that soon after delivery, it helps to prevent excessive bleeding. Okay, so oxytocin, if a mother continues to breastfeed, say beyond like 7 months and onwards, her uterus becomes sensitive to oxytocin, and she may have premature. So they shouldn't wean off abruptly, but it should be done gradually, planning for it, and by 6 months she stops.
Sorry to ask you this again. Is there such a thing as breast milk imasasa? Some mothers usually use that statement more often, actually.
In fact, I've mentioned that when I was saying that some mothers, just one day, not putting the baby on the breast, they will say milk inasasa. Milk cannot go sour in a person who is living alive. It only goes sour when you get the milk and put it out there. Even from a cow, you never get sour milk. If you take the cow's milk and leave it out, then it becomes fermented, it becomes sour by the action of the bacteria. So, as I mentioned, even if the baby does not breastfeed for a day or two, or because mom has been unwell, the moment mother gets better, they should put the baby back on the breast. So actually that is called relactation. Okay, so, and it's something we encourage very much, because it's life-saving for the baby to be put back on the breast. Yeah.
Okay. This one, no name there, but he's asking, my child has good Viscera mood. What could be the problem?
That is fungal infection, Viscera. It's fungal infection, and it's common in children. Also, I don't know if it's a school-going children, when they play together and all that, sometimes on the towels as well. Make sure they are drying their towels outside, and then they shave off the hair and they can go to the hospital. They'll be given some medication for Viscera. It's a fungal infection for the skin. Can be on the skin, can also be on the scalp.
It's very common to see many parents getting part of the egg mixed with porridge, sometimes mixed with any other, complementary food that they might want to give to the child. This text here is no name, but they're asking to say which part of the egg should be used. I know the yolk is the most common one. Now, my question in line with this could be, under what circumstances can a mother, a father use part of the egg to mix to the complementary food?
I mean, we always see that, and we wonder where it comes from. If you look at the egg, the protein, the egg white is the protein, actually. Then the egg yolk, yellow, that's the fat, the cholesterol and all that. So we don't know where it comes from, where people now are separating. If you are giving your child an egg, give the whole egg. Even that process of separating to make porridge, in the end, you even get contaminated. So people believe the egg yolk is the most nutritious. Actually, the egg white, that is the protein. Yeah. I hope I've answered.
Well, I didn't know as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know as well. The concept that we have always been entertaining is the fact that, the yolk is the most nutritious. The other side, no.
That is the albumin, that is the protein, yeah?
Okay. Okay, great. So, I don't know whether an egg is also healthy to be among the complementary foods that, a mother should be using.
As I said, that initially the complementary foods that we introduce will be the porridges, isn't it? Maize based or maybe cereal based. Yeah, so those are the ones which are then enriched, either adding milk, oil, or adding groundnuts and oil. Some people say you can pound, not even some, I mean, we also advise that you can pound carpenter, fish as a source of protein, and add it to the porridge to give the child. I think there is usually advice to delay giving the egg as well, because remember I talked about allergies, and then some people were allergic and all that. So we tend to say maybe at about, say, 1 year onwards. Yeah, that's when you would introduce to give an egg to the child, unless there's some specific situation that you need to give that as a result. But it's not the first thing that you're going to give to a 6-month-old. Maybe the first thing that we're giving are porridges, and then we follow that by purees. We give this sort of fruits. And I tell mothers, even at the local, at home level, they can do a puree, like an apple, peel it. Every mother has a sieve in the house, so if you peel an apple and then you just sort of rub it on the sieve, what you get is a puree. In the banana as well, so you can make fruit purees as well. You can do vegetable purees, like some beans, fresh beans. Also, you can do that, and that's what you need to give to the babies. Vegetables as well. So those are the things that should be done. So we start with cereals, and then we start adding vegetables. But what is important, ensure that we are introducing one at a time. Yeah, and then avoiding all these sweetened drinks that are so now available. Colorful bottles and pink, blue, whatever. They come in all sorts of colors, purple and all that. And these are the things that mothers have been buying, putting in the feeding bottles and giving to the babies. And such babies end up with severe acute malnutrition. So usually cereal-based. And also, why do we start giving those cereals at 6 months? We also look at whatever food we're giving, it has to be digested. And the cereals we start giving are predominantly starch. Starch is digested by an enzyme called amylase, produced mainly in the pancreas. So the amylase is active around 5-6 months, but mainly by about 6 months. So that's why we give it the food at that time. If you start giving porridge early, it won't be digested. Most of it is going to be passed out. Of course, the baby will not cry. If you give them the porridge, they will be full because you've given something to fill the stomach. But what's the fate of the porridge given before 6 months? It's all passed out, and the baby won't thrive. So babies are only ready to take the cereals from 6 months onwards. Yeah, and then thereafter we start adding fruits, one at a time, the vegetables one at a time. As the baby tolerates, then you can add. And what is important is mixed feeding as well. Make sure that the feed that is given to the child contains all the food components: carbohydrate, fat, protein, minerals, and vitamins. And all this information is actually on the under 5 card. A lot of times the under 5 card, parents just look at it as a immunization card, but they should read more. Our nutritionist colleague have written and they've put the different food groups. There's a plate in the middle and arrows pointing that whatever food you give your child, it should have everything from all the food groups. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Amadi, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
And of course, thank you so much for sharing this vital information with us. Hopefully that you will definitely find some time next time to come through and of course share more and educate more.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we've been discussing breastfeeding and, of course, introduction of complementary food stuff. I know a lot really had a lot of questions. Many people wanted to come through live and express themselves through phone calls, but we'll see in future. And of course, remember this program airs every Sunday. It's between 13 and of course 14. Different pediatricians come through to discuss different topics pertaining to your child's health as well. I've been your host, Nelson Zulu, and of course I'll be back next week Sunday, same time, God willing. And of course, I know a lot of people also wanted to know exactly how should a mother who is HIV positive really handle the health of a child. I could see a couple of messages coming through asking, can a mother who is HIV positive breastfeed? Can a mother who is HIV positive breastfeed, and so on and so forth? I think Dr. Amadi did touch that particular aspect, but obviously in the future subsequent episodes we should also be able to to obviously discuss the issue of HIV and the child's health as well. Otherwise, for today, this is enough. Hopefully that you have enough time to go through your under 5 card and of course just study all of it. You'd find that this information is embedded on that particular under 5 card, and it's quite helpful in as far as promoting a good health for your child is concerned. I'll be back next week sometime.